Facelift, a very common practice that many automakers partake in updating their aging model, but there are no other brands that really take facelift seriously, none other than our favorite German brand. Of course, we're talking about BMW. So much so they call their facelift model LCI Life Cycle Impulse. And in front of us here, we got the new BMW i4 facelift in its new entry-level eDrive35 M Sport. And today we ask the question, how do you really perfect an already decent car to make it better for the future? Let's find out. I'm Mukhlis, and this is Caricarz. Alright, at one glance, one can be forgiven for mistaking the i4 facelift to its pre-facelift twin, because let's face it, the design changes for the facelift model is quite subtle, but it is essential to make this already nice looking car a bit nicer to your eyes. Okay, the biggest change lies in the front, because you can see it gets these new sharp LED headlights with this L-shaped LED light, and it also comes with BMW high beam assist, which is quite nice to use at night time. But more importantly, the front grille here, you can see this signature large kidney front grille has looking just a bit more subdued compared to last time, because thanks to this new triangular shaped inserts that minimizes the large kidney front grille here. So it looks less prominent than before, and dare I say, it looks much nicer compared to the pre-facelift model. Well, as you can see, rolling stocks have also been changed, because the i4 facelift now rides on this new 19-inch alloy wheels with this more enclosed aerodynamic design compared to before, but this is still a M-specific parts here. Same goes to the rear part, because as you can see, it gets this new LED laser taillight, which looks much nicer. And fun fact, this taillight has actually been derived directly from the sporty BMW M4. So overall, the car still looks nice. It still retains the same fastback, sporty, coupe, EV body style, but overall, thanks to this minor improvement design, this car looks just nicer compared to the pre-facelift model. Alright, so now we get inside the facelifted i4 in this supposed entry-level eDrive35 M Sport trim, and thanks to the M Sport inclusion, life inside here doesn't feel too much barren, at least, because there are some minor changes here, including this new M Sport steering wheel. Mind you, this is the same unit used on the 3 Series G20 facelift, and it's got the M badge here, and it's actually flat bottom, and it is wrapped in leather, which is very nice and very grippy. But of course, you don't have any pedal shifters, you just get the standard buttons and whatnot. Okay, other new thing is actually at the center, because you'll notice that it comes with this redesigned aircon vents, which some people kind of hate it because it gets a little bit more complicated to control, but I feel it looks pretty nice, pretty okay, because you at least still got some physical buttons down here for the climate and then for the infotainment. But one thing I also like about this car is actually the usage of this aluminum trims instead of the reflective gloss black, piano black finish in many other BMW models, because as you can see, even with the bright sun and everything, it's not that reflective compared to the piano black panels used on other models. When of course inside here you still got wireless charging pad, USB-C charging ports and whatnot, and you still get this physical controls and dials for the infotainment, and same again, it doesn't use any reflective material, so it looks quite nice even on the bright sunlight. But the biggest changes actually lies on the seats, because gone is a leather or at least vegan leather wrap seat, because in favor, the i4 now comes with this semi-bucket sport seat wrapped in this M Perform Text upholstery. It feels like a mix of Alcantara and fabric, and it also get this M specific color stitching. You can see you got the M logo here, you got red and blue stitching here that looks quite nice and quite sporty, and dare I say, it feels nicer compared to the Viganza leather seats we tried in the previous gen model. But other than that, infotainment is the same. So you got this dual display BMW curved display powered by BMW OS 8.5. You still got the same wireless and auto, Apple CarPlay and whatnot, and it still looks the same, it still functions the same, it functions very smoothly. But unfortunately, if you look up, there are no sunroof here, but that's a given. But overall, it still feels nice, but it's still missing some key amenities, but still, it is quite nice compared to many other EVs out there. Well, as you can see live at the back seat of the i4, it's still less spacious as the previous model, but other than that, it's not that bad either. Okay, first thing, of course, in terms of legroom and headroom, I still got slightly ample legroom, and headroom surprisingly it's quite okay despite the car's sporty fastback roof line compared to other EVs like the Audi e-tron GT something. This one feels a bit more spacious and still livable. Okay, in terms of amenities, of course, you get your dedicated aircon vent, you got even the dedicated control panel, so it's a triple zone AC control for this car, and you got two USB-C charging ports down here, and of course, up here, you get this built-in armrest with cup holders and whatnot inside here. Why is it important? Because as you can see, the center tunnel of this car is quite prominent, so seating 3 adults at the back can be quite an impossible feat, unfortunately, unless your adult at the center don't have any legs. But other than that, yes, space is not as large as expected like the BMW 3 Series, but it's still okay, it's still livable, especially for 2 adults, but 3 adults can be quite a stretch. Well, that's a given. Well, despite the rear space is a bit tight, the i4 still gets a pretty sizable boot space here. As standard, it measures about 470 liters, but if you need an extra space, you can just fold down the rear seats, allowing up to 1,200 liters of space. And one thing is also interesting because thanks to its fastback design, you can see it comes with this liftback tailgate, and the aperture is quite large, so much so you can just jump on the trunk here and sit like you're driving an SUV. But unfortunately, thanks to its EV layout, you don't have any space for a spare wheel, but instead you got some space for your cables and tire repair kit, whatnot. Well, that's a given in most EVs nowadays. Well, in case you worry about the tailgate opening so high up here, fret not, because the i4 tailgate here, you can adjust the opening height using the infotainment. So in case you live in a tight space, you can just lower it down a little bit using the infotainment inside. So pretty convenient. Well, if you're looking for a V8 or a straight-six engine, bad news for you, because the i4 eDrive35 M Sport still uses the same single rear-mounted electric motor setup as before, outputting 286 PS and 400 Nm of torque. 0 to 100 takes about 6 seconds, and top speed is capped at 190 km/h. And same goes to the mechanicals, because this car still underpins the same CLAR platform as before, which it shares with things like the 5 Series and even the 3 Series V20, and it's still got the same adaptive M suspension setup, but I believe they've been slightly tweaked the tuning because this car feels a bit more refined compared to the previous release model, so it gets less bumpy on roads compared to the previous model. But what certainly has been improved is actually lies on the battery pack, because according to BMW, the i4 facelift still uses the same 70.3 kWh battery pack, but its net capacity has been improved to 67.1 kWh, so granting this car with up to 500 km of WLTP EV range. In terms of charging, it's more or less the same. AC 11 kW takes this car from 0 to 100 in about 7 hours, while DC 180 kW charging charges this car from 10 to 80% in just 32 minutes. So improvement on the efficiency, but charging wise, it's still the same as before. Right folks, so now we're behind the wheel of the new BMW i4 eDrive35 M Sport Facelift LCI. And of course, the first thing you notice about this car is that it just drives as nice as the pre-facelift model, because granted, this is a very low slung car, it sits very close to the ground, and then even the driving position and everything, it feels like you're driving a sports car instead of a 5-seater 4-door Grand Coupe saloon. And despite this being entry-level eDrive35 M Sport, mind you, last time we take the eDrive40 M Sport model, which is slightly more powerful than this, but the car still feels zippy, feels rapid and all, because of course, with EVs, you get the instant torque and everything, but really the one thing that really makes this car a delightful machine to drive is, of course, the ride and handling and the chassis dynamics of BMW. Because, of course, we've talked about this many times already. BMW, you give them any kinds of power sources, be it hydrogen, diesel, petrol, turbo, EVs and whatnot, they for sure know how to make a very, very nice driving car. And the i4 joins the long list of that, because yeah, again, just for base spec now, you can really carve through the corners really well. It feels very planted, very commanding and very stable. So much so that, but at the same time, it doesn't feel that harsh, because one thing I remember about the previous model is that it feels quite bumpy, but not this one. This one feels a bit more refined. I mean, of course, not as refined as something like the i5. I mean, that still ranks on top of the best EVs I've ever driven, but this thing is still not bad. I mean, if you go through bumps and everything, you can still feel everything because the car sits low to the ground, but it's not too jarring, not too bumpy, especially compared to cheaper, sporty Chinese EVs that we've driven before. Because yes, that's one thing that the Chinese are really still lacking behind the Europeans. It comes to vehicle dynamics. The Europeans or even the Japanese are still ahead of the curve, at least in that form. Of course, in terms of power wise, okay, it's enough for you to accelerate. It feels quite zippy for you to overtake people and everything, but the top speeds only capped at 190 kilometers per hour, which is still not bad. But with that being said, it's really about the dynamics. So maybe, like I said now, maybe they've slightly tweaked the adaptive M suspension setup on this car, because it really does feel a bit more just slightly more refined compared to last time, but it still can handle corners. You can tackle corners, sharp corners, B roads and everything in this car in a very confident manner. So overall, yes, it's a facelift. Granted that there are not many performance upgrades on paper, at least, but then again, it is already a nice car to drive. So the facelift model just slightly make it a little bit more perfect, closer to perfection at least than before. So the i4 is still a proper variant. It drives like a proper variant and it looks like a proper variant. So if you're familiar with the BMW driving dynamics, then you would be enjoying your time behind the wheels of the i4 facelift here, even for the eDrive35 M Sport trim here. Alright, so compared to other fancier BMW EVs, I think the i4, in terms of ergonomics, layout and everything, it still feels a bit more tradition, because you still got plenty of buttons, especially in the central console here, because unlike other models, you get less buttons, but this one, you still get buttons for each of the driving modes, you get buttons for the traction control system, and much more, which is quite nice. Same goes to the center here, because you still got 1 or 2 buttons for the climate control. But of course, still, most of the driving or the setting part is being hidden inside the infotainment, which is a given in many modern cars nowadays. Not just EVs, even ICE-powered cars is falling on the same trick here. Okay, but other than that, of course, like I said earlier, this car, it sits very low to the ground, close to the ground. So in terms of position and everything, it feels very sporty, very agile, but at the same time, thanks to the power adjustment, because you can adjust the lumbar support and the bolster side support for the driver's seat, so that if you want a bit of more comfortable driving position, you can just adjust the seats as you will. And of course, the front driver's seat comes with a memory function, which is quite ideal, so you can just switch to, like, if you have like a more sportier driving position and a more relaxed driving position, you can just set it up and save it here. Okay, other than that, in terms of safety, of course, this being a BMW car, one of the most safe cars in the world, if you will, you get tons of ADAS functions and everything, and all of them works pretty well, like the adaptive cruise control, even the lane keeping assist. It doesn't feel that jittery or that finicky compared to some cheaper, especially Chinese cars that I've tested before. So in terms of ADAS, it's okay, but still, unfortunately, although you still got buttons like to set up the cruise control and everything, but there are still some ADAS function that you still need to access using the infotainment here, which can be quite a shame, because you already got tons of buttons. You just might as well add 1 or 2 extra buttons for the ADAS functions while you're at it. But other than that, there's nothing much to complain. But of course, the biggest, according to BMW, the improvement is actually on the car's battery efficiency and range, because they promises this car got a much higher, slightly higher WLTP range from 483 to up to 500 kilometers. But honestly, during our short stint, which is filled with lots of spirited driving session and everything, efficiency, of course, is not the best thing about this car, because like it or not, although with only like in the eDrive35 M Sport form, because of the sportiness of the position and everything, you tend to drive this car slightly quicker and slightly more aggressive than your normal car. So it is bound to be driven hard and sport for this car. So like it or not, efficiency is gonna be your best friend. But with that being said, we still managed to get at least about 350 to 400 kilometers from a single full charge, which is still okay and possible if you're using it for daily usage. But if you want to go to work and your occasional weekend out trip, you want to go to Toge, you go to Genting and everything, it is still a usable EV. So overall, ergonomics pretty good. It's quite sporty, but just slightly missing in terms of buttons and everything. Safety wise, quite okay, but still a lot of settings hiding inside the infotainment. And of course, in terms of efficiency, not the best thing in the world, but you can still get about 400 kilometers of EV range, provided you be quite conservative with your driving style. Alright, so to sum it up, the facelifted BMW i4 eDrive35 M Sport does get some minor updates compared to its predecessor, so much so that it makes the car slightly more bearable and more usable even for daily users or for you just to enjoy driving in canyons and whatnot. But of course, at 294,800 ringgit, it is quite a tall ask to buy something that's sporty and less comfortable compared to many other conventional sedans out there. But in case you're in the market for a sporty EV, then this should be considered inside your list. Of course, it's still about 100 grand more expensive compared to your Chinese investor out there, but of course, this being a European car, you get all the European bells and whistles and benefits on top of being a pretty usable and capable EV. So like it or not, if you're looking this car as a very sporty and capable car that happens to be electric and capable of carrying up to 4 or 5 passengers, then the BMW i4 eDrive35 M Sport is really a not bad proposition provided you can afford to buy them.